Hello, this is another one of the videos in my series from an old manuscript of mine, The Universal House of Justice and the Baha'i World 1963 to 1973. This one on the adoption of the Constitution of the Universal House of Justice. As with other videos in this series, the basic text is the book Messages from the Universal House of Justice 1963-1986, which you should refer to for the full text of the documents I'm summarizing. There's also an article I wrote a long time ago with Moojan Momen summarizing briefly the developments in the Baha'i faith from 1957 to 1988, which is relevant to this series. First of all, let's just run over some of the major dates for this period. First of all, in 1963, there was the first International Baha'i Convention in late April, then the election of the House of Justice itself on the 21st of April, and the House's statement that there could be no more guardians of the faith on the 6th of October. Then in 1964, the launching of the first 9-year plan at Rizwan. Those of you not familiar with Baha'i terminology, this is the annual event that the Baha'is hold to commemorate Baha'u'llah's initial declaration of mission in Baghdad in 1863 to a small group of his followers. That runs from the 21st of April through to the 2nd of May. If you want details of the Baha'i terminology and such, then then there's my short or concise Encyclopedia of the Baha'i faith. I'll put the reference to that below. Then in 1968, we have the Second International Baha'i Convention. Again in April. You can see that this April date is repeated, and the election of the House again on the 21st of April. And then in 1972, the announcement of the decision to build the seat of the House of Justice on the 7th of June, and adoption of the Constitution of the House of Justice on the 26th of November. And finally, in 1973, the Third International Baha'i Convention, a little bit later than the other two, this one from the 29th of April to the 1st of May, and the election of the House of Justice on the 29th of April, and the celebration of the centenary of the revelation of Baha'u'llah's Book of Laws, the Kitab al-Aqdas, on the 2nd of May. During the first few months of its existence, the House of Justice made a number of important decisions regarding its own functioning. First, it would not have officers. This was announced on the 7th of May 1963. Second, it would occupy the whole of the Western Pilgrim House, including the former offices of the International Baha'i Council, as its official offices. This was announced on the 16th of June. And thirdly, the next election of the House of Justice would take place in the spring of 1968. That would be 5 years after the first. Then the House announced that a new global plan in succession to the 10-year crusade would begin at Rizwan 1964. That announcement was made on the 7th of May 63, and it took over the legal headship of the faith from the custodial hands on the 7th of June, and announced that there would be no successor to Shaka Effendi as guardian on the 6th of October. The House also responded to such urgent matters as the destruction of the Ashgabat temple in what was then the Soviet Union, and the plight of a group of Baha'is imprisoned in Morocco for their religion, because it was questioned in the notes or comments under one of the earlier videos. I should say this phrase 10-year crusade doesn't have any military significance. It's just another piece of Baha'i terminology. So now we turn to the adoption of the Constitution. One major focus for subsequent developments in the Baha'i faith was what was revealed to be a 9-year plan running from 1964 up to 1973. This was formally announced in October 63 and begun in April 64. Much of the emphasis of this new plan was on a global campaign of expansion and consolidation designed to establish the Baha'i faith more widely and more deeply in the world. I'll talk about that in later videos. But there was also a very significant part of the plan devoted to what were termed World Center goals, one of the most important of which concerned the institutional development of the House of Justice itself in terms of the formulation of its own constitution. I should say that this term World Center in a Baha'i context refers to the Baha'i shrines and administrative buildings in the area of Haifa and Akka, in what was originally Ottoman Palestine, nowadays modern Israel. And again, if you refer to my Concise Encyclopedia, there's an entry there on the Baha'i World Center which goes into more detail. The work on preparing the Constitution required both a careful study of the relevant Baha'i texts and the resolution of various important questions. By Rezvan 1967, work on the formulation of the Constitution was well advanced. Preliminary drafts and studies for the Constitution already were completed by November 1968, and the completion of the Constitution and its formal adoption were announced on the 26th of November 1972. For the House, the adoption of its own constitution was a, quote, profoundly significant step in the unfoldment of its mission. The House was the supreme organ of the future Baha'i World Commonwealth, and its constitution had been hailed by Sheikh Effendi as the most great law of the faith. The formulation and formal approval of this document would no doubt further reinforce the ties that bound the Baha'i World Center to national and local Baha'i communities throughout the world, as well as releasing fresh energies, again quote, and increase the enthusiasm and confidence of the faith's valiant workers. The Constitution consists of two documents. First, a declaration of trust, and secondly, a set of bylaws. The declaration defines the nature of authority within the Baha'i faith, delineated the powers and duties of the House of Justice, and outlined the nature of decision-making by the members of the House. The bylaws outlined the overall structure of Baha'i administration, that included community membership, local and national spiritual assemblies, the obligations of assembly members, the Universal House of Justice itself, Baha'i elections, the House's right of review of all assembly decisions, the Baha'is' right of appeal against assembly decisions, the Board of Councillors, the auxiliary boards, and amendments to the Constitution. That's a large section. I'll leave that for the next video. The Declaration of Trust then is what we'll talk about today, with the exception of the sections in the Declaration on the Boards of Councillors and on the auxiliary boards. The document can be summarized as follows. First, in terms of authority within the Baha'i faith. Baha'u'llah, for Baha'is, was the revealer of God's word in this day and the source of divine authority. He was the judge, the lawgiver, the unifier and redeemer for the whole of humankind. He'd come to establish the most great peace, God's kingdom on earth, and had formulated the laws, principles and institutions for this new world order. He had instituted a covenant so as to direct and canalize the forces released by his revelation. By this means, the integrity and unity of the Baha'i faith had been maintained, and its expansion stimulated through the successive ministries of Abdul Baha Sheikh Effendi, and now continued under the Universal House of Justice. The Baha'i Covenant now continued to fulfill its life-giving purpose through the agency of the Universal House of Justice, a body which is one of the twin successors of Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha, along with guardianship, had as its fundamental objective the following. One, to ensure the continuity of the divinely appointed authority that flowed from Baha'u'llah. Two, to safeguard the unity of the Baha'is. And three, to maintain the integrity and flexibility of the Baha'i teachings. The provenance, authority, duties, and sphere of action of the House of Justice all derived from the revealed writings of Baha'u'llah, which, together with the interpretations and expositions of Abdu'l-Baha Effendi, constituted the binding terms of reference of the House of Justice and were its, quotes, bedrock foundation. The authority of these Baha'i texts being absolute and immutable, again the quotation, until the appearance of the next divine messenger. Because there had been no successor to Shaykh Effendi as guardian, the House of Justice was now the head of the faith and its supreme institution, to which all must turn. For the same reason, the House had to carry ultimate responsibility for ensuring the unity and progress of the faith, direct and coordinate the work of the hands of the cause, ensure the continuing discharge of the functions of protection and propagation vested in the institution of the hands, and provide for the receipt and disbursement of the hukla. This is a financial calling. Again, see my encyclopedia for details. As to the powers and duties of the House of Justice, these included the following. One, to ensure the preservation of the Baha'i sacred texts and to safeguard their inviolability. Two, to analyze, classify, and coordinate the Baha'i writings, that is, the sacred texts and the authoritative interpretations and expositions of Abdu'l-Baha Effendi. Three, to defend and protect the Baha'i cause and emancipate it from the fetters of repression and persecution. Four, to advance the interests of the faith, including the proclamation, propagation, and teaching of its message, and the expansion and consolidation of its administrative institutions. Five, to usher in what's termed the world order of Baha'u'llah. And six, to promote the attainment of Baha'i qualities in the lives of individuals and the community, Baha'i community that is. 7, to do its utmost for the realization of greater cordiality and comity amongst the nations and the attainment of universal peace. 8, to foster that which is conducive to the enlightenment and illumination of the souls of men and the advancement and betterment of the world. 9, to enact laws not expressly recorded in the Baha'i sacred texts and to abrogate, according to the changes and requirements of the time, its own enactments. 10, to deliberate and decide upon all questions which have caused difference and to elucidate questions that are obscure. 11, to safeguard the personal rights, freedom, and initiative of individuals. 12, to give attention to the preservation of human honor, the development of countries, and the stability of states. 13, to promulgate and apply the laws and principles of the faith, safeguarding and enforcing that rectitude of conduct which the law of God enjoined. 14, to preserve and develop the Baha'i World Center, that's the Faith, Spiritual and Administrative Center, permanently fixed in the twin cities of Accra and Haifa. 15, to administer the affairs of the Baha'i community throughout the world, guiding, organizing, coordinating and unifying its activities, founding institutions, and ensuring that no Baha'i body or institution abuse its privileges or decline in the exercise of its rights and prerogatives. 16. To provide for the receipt, disposition, administration and safeguarding of funds, endowments and other properties that are entrusted to its care. 17. To adjudicate disputes falling within its purview, give judgment in cases where Baha'i law has been violated, and provide for the enforcement of its decisions. And finally, 18. To provide for the arbitration and settlement of disputes arising between peoples, and to be the exponent and guardian of that divine justice which could alone ensure the security of the world and establish the reign of law and order within it. Then, in relationship to decision-making by the House of Justice, Baha'u'llah designated the members of the Universal House of Justice as the trustees of God among his servants and the dayspring of authority in his countries. That comes from his book, Tablets of Baha'u'llah in English, and promised that members of the House would be inspired by God in their decision-making. Sheikh Effendi had stated that in their legislative work, the members were to prayerfully follow the dictates and promptings of their conscience. The members should acquaint themselves with the conditions prevailing in the community and dispassionately consider the merits of any case presented for their consideration. But ultimately they had to reserve for themselves the right of unfettered decision. In their decision-making, they were not responsible to those whom they represented, and they were not to be governed by the feelings, opinions and convictions of the mass of the Baha'is or of the National Assembly members who had elected them. It was only the House members collectively who had been made the recipients of that divine guidance, which was at once the lifeblood and ultimate safeguard of this revelation. So, as always, many thanks to my patrons for their kind support and encouragement. Without them, I wouldn't be able to make these videos. You're always welcome to support my channel if you so wish. Do like, comment and share on the videos, it's helpful. And subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. I'll give a Patreon link below in case you want to provide practical support. Next week, we'll move on to the bylaws of the Constitution. Have a good day. So, by way of a postscript, let me apologise to anyone distracted by the noises from the nearby busy main road or the men working. As you gather, I don't live in a monastic, quiet environment, nor would I want to probably. So that means noise here occurs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I just try to make the videos when it's quieter. At least today there were no low-flying helicopters, or not yet, nor were the loud bird noises, which we sometimes get. And I waited until some guys finished doing some deconstruction nearby. I'm not quite sure what they were doing, but it was very noisy. Anyway, that's the way we are here. So again, have a good day.